Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a massive, universally relevant topic, and that is international business. We're going to completely demystify the exact mechanics of what actually happens when a company outgrows its home turf. And to make these core concepts crystal clear, we aren't just going to sit here looking at dry theory. No way, we are going to follow a real-world scenario right from the very first decision point. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to meet Mr. Sudhir Manchanda. He's a small manufacturer running an auto parts factory over in Gurgaon. It is a solid, mid-sized operation, He employs about 55 workers and has a serious investment, about 9.2 million rupees, tied up in planted machinery. But right now, he is facing a massive dilemma. The domestic market is in a recession. It's tough out there. He really doesn't foresee his sales bouncing back locally anytime soon. His local market is literally drying up, so he knows he needs to grow, and he's naturally looking beyond his own country's borders.
Now, the real friction here comes from the conflicting advice Mr. Manchanda is getting from his inner circle. On one hand, his son, who is freshly armed with a US MBA, is pushing for a really aggressive move. He's saying, let's set up a fully owned factory in Bangkok to dominate the Southeast Asia and Middle East markets, and we'll slash transport costs while we're at it. But, on the other hand, a close friend of his in the tire business offers a pretty stark reality check. He warns that operating internationally isn't just about scaling up what you already do. It is a completely different, highly complex game that's played under entirely foreign conditions.
So put yourself in this entrepreneur's shoes for a second. What's the strategic play here? Should he just play it relatively safe, find some overseas buyers and export directly from Gurgaon? Or should he go all in, take the plunge, and build a wholly owned factory abroad? Navigating this exact pivot is a total rite of passage for growing firms, and honestly, it's exactly the framework we are unpacking for you today.
But before we actually solve Mr. Manchanda's problem, let's clearly define the arena we're playing in. International business isn't just about shipping boxes across borders. I think a lot of people get that wrong. The absolutely crucial distinction here is that it encompasses actual manufacturing, production, and localized marketing operations set up on foreign soil. It's the whole shebang, taking place beyond the geographical boundaries of your home country. And this brings us to the macro picture, what we call the global village. National economies that historically clung to self-reliance are now deeply, deeply intertwined. Why? Well, advanced communication, tech infrastructure, and hyper-efficient transport have completely dismantled those old geographic hurdles. Plus, when you add in massive economic reforms and global bodies like the IMF and WTO actively working to remove trade friction, you get today's highly integrated, practically borderless economies.
All right, so that explains why the global economy is so connected from a bird's eye view. But let's transition from that macro level back to the micro level. Like, what is the fundamental push for a single firm, like our auto parts factory in Gurgaon, to actually go global? Why don't they just stay home, hunker down, and wait out the recession?
So the crucial point is that no country can produce absolutely everything equally well or cheaply. The fundamental push for globalization really comes down to leveraging global inequalities. Firms are practically forced outward by the unequal distribution of natural resources, massive gaps in national productivity, and wildly varying labor costs. They expand because they just have to. They need to secure essential capital and raw materials, or maybe they're looking to import goods at lower prices, or simply fetch premium prices for exported products in foreign markets that they could literally never command back home.
Which brings us right back to that core contrast Mr. Manchanda's friend warned him about: domestic business versus international business. Operating a domestic business is, relatively speaking, of course, like living in a comfortable, homogeneous bubble. You know the rules, you know the culture, you know the laws. It's familiar. But global trade? Oh man, that introduces a wild array of unpredictable variables. The complexity ramps up exponentially the very second you cross a border.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the rules of the game change entirely when crossing borders. At home, your stakeholders generally share consistent cultural values and national identities, but internationally, you are suddenly managing deeply complex, often conflicting values across different countries. Things like capital and labor, which move around super freely domestically, suddenly hit these massive walls of local laws and sociocultural restrictions abroad. And perhaps most critically, you're trading one predictable political and tax system for an absolute minefield of high political risks and multiple conflicting regulatory policies and tariffs.
But the complexity goes far deeper than just laws and borders. It fundamentally alters consumer behavior. Simply being aware of cultural and economic differences isn't nearly enough.
Successful international firms have to actively adapt their entire business and marketing strategies. For example, consumers in developing nations might need highly price-sensitive products, which requires an entirely different approach than the high-quality premium goods demanded in developed nations. If Mr. Manchanda goes global, his Gorgon playbook basically goes right out the window. He has to adapt to these deep, localized market sensitivities.
And then we have the paperwork reality. To prove his friend's warning right, just look at what it actually takes to simply move one product out of the country. You need an IEC number, a bill of lading, a mate receipt, a letter of credit, a shipping bill, a certificate of origin, relentless customs clearance, commercial invoices, a site draft. I mean, it is an absolute avalanche of documentation. The sheer administrative friction alone is enough to make anyone want to just retreat right back to their domestic bubble.
We have definitely covered a lot of ground today. We've looked at the staggering complexities, the shifting regulations, the need to adapt to different cultural sensitivities, and of course, that immense mountain of paperwork. But I want to leave you with a final thought about our anchor case study. Remember Mr. Manchanda's initial problem? A domestic recession. His local market was failing him. So I have to ask you, in a world that is completely integrated, a world that truly acts like a global village, is facing the immense complexity of international trade the real danger? Or is relying solely on a single shrinking domestic market actually the biggest risk of all? Definitely keep that in mind as you study the mechanics of global business. Thanks for exploring this topic with me, and I will catch you on the next explainer.